Well, I guess here I go for my first video. Um, I decided I wanted to try to make a YouTube channel to kind of celebrate or talk about my cancer, and that on August 26th, it'll be 13 years since I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. It's been a long 13 years. It has not been easy. To give you a little background on myself, some of you may know because I do post my updates from my friends and family on my Facebook. But I will give you a quick rundown. I'm hoping with this channel that I can give story times about specific therapies and procedures I've had done, so you guys would know what you're going into. Not to scare anybody, but when you go in for procedures or different things, you don't know what to expect and you're nervous, and I'd like to try to help with that. I'd like to help with letting you know you're not alone, it's not the end. That kind of thing is what my channel, I want it to be about. What you can do to pass the time, because there is a lot of downtime. Hobbies, volunteering stuff that I've done. Anyway, but that's what I want my channel to be about, is just getting everybody through it. I was diagnosed with stage 3A breast cancer in August of 2010. I was 35. At the time, I was working, well, actually, it was the second or third day of school. I had the biopsy the day before school started, and then found out the following week. But I was going through all my testing the first week of school that year, and I worked full-time for the schools at the time. I loved the job. I worked with children that needed special care, from all gamuts, from mild to severe. I loved that job. I also had 2 very active boys. My youngest was starting 6th grade. My oldest was starting 9th grade. 2 very big years for them. They were both athletic, so they were in sports. And my husband, he worked for the mill, so he worked shift work, which is very common around here because we're a mill community. So it was very busy without the cancer. We also had 4 dogs and 2 cats and a house and a pool, and typical middle class life. When I was diagnosed, or before I was diagnosed, I should say, I had gone through about 2 years of being sick. I was lethargic, tired all the time, and a lot of pain. I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia when my kids were really little, so I was already in a lot of pain. My fibromyalgia was mostly through my thoracic area, around my rib cage, my shoulder, or like my neck. Very painful, so I was going to see doctors all the time, pain specialists, trying to get under control. About a year and a half before my diagnosis, I started having, sorry, I'm in a parking lot waiting for my husband. He's getting an epidural today. So I figured it'd be a good time for me to sit here and talk to you. At that point, about a year before, my breast started, my right breast started getting weird. It started leaking a little, and I had breastfed my kids, and I always had hormone issues growing up. Not like uterine issues or anything, but just problems with my hormones. My breast leaked when I was in my teens. And which maybe they'll find out someday that that's something that was precursor to my breast cancer, that I always had a breast leakage issue. But it got worse. My nipple changed shape and got colored. It turned dark. The nipple inverted. So I started going to my doctor and trying to figure this out. And at the time I wasn't 35. My insurance company wasn't approving mammograms for anybody under 40 at the time. So my GP, I love him. I will ask him if I can name him on here, but I won't, because I know he's very busy. But he ran me through the gamut of every other test but the mammogram to try to figure it out. He CT'd my hypothalamus and pituitary, blood tests, everything that could try to explain a hormonal issue. And those all came back with nothing. I went to my oncologist, not my oncologist, my gynecologist. I loved her. She's retired now. My aunt and my mom both worked for her at one point, and she couldn't figure it out. She said to me one day, she goes, even if insurance doesn't cover this, she goes, we're going to cover it. We're going to get it done. Because she knew that my, pocketbook was tight. So I went for the mammogram. And that was early August of 10, finally. I was 35 at the time. Insurance did end up picking it up. I went into the Women's Center. Sorry, I'm looking all over the place because there's people walking around. And I'm new to this. I went in for the ultrasound at the Portage Hospital. They had a women's health center there. I don't know if it's still there. And they had me do the mammogram. It was kind of funny because I have a milk issue, right? And they put me in the machine and they squeeze my breast and milk goes flying across the room. It kind of made me laugh because you don't think about that when you're going in. But if you don't know, they put like a little sticker over your nipple with little beads in there so they can align the machine. They can see where the nipple is and get everything centered. And they squeeze you, whatever. When I was done, they sent me to a waiting room to wait. And the lady comes out, the nurse or tech comes out, and she's says, you need to have an ultrasound right away. We're going to have you walk over and do that right now. So that kind of freaks me out. So I go have the ultrasound done, go back in the waiting room. An ultrasound, if you haven't had a breast ultrasound, it's not as fun as a pregnancy ultrasound. They do press really hard. If you have lumpy breasts or cystic breasts, it can be painful because they do have to press hard to get down to the chest wall to get all the visions they need. So they do it. It's not bad. It's just a lot of pressure. And if you haven't had an ultrasound done, they put jelly on you, and so they can do the wand on you. But it's not bad. It's probably the easiest thing you're going to go through if you have an issue. So I'm at the hospital and I'm sitting in the waiting room by myself not thinking a big deal of it. And the tech comes back to get me and says the radiologist wants to see you in his office. I'm like, okay, this is kind of scary. So I walk in to his room where he has all the like x-rays on the wall. It's like when you look at Grey's Anatomy and they walk into the room when they're looking at x-rays, it's the whole walls, just x-rays on the wall. And he's got his desk and he pulls up some of my pictures from my ultrasound and from the mammogram. And he's like, do you see all these like white stuff here in this circle? And I said, yeah, that just looked like someone had thrown a bunch of BBs at the screen, and it was calcifications. And he says, do you know what calcifications are? And I don't know anything about that. He's like, well, usually we see calcifications around areas where there is cancer. He said, I'm not saying you have cancer. I'm just saying that you might. So we need to get you in for a biopsy as soon as we can. So at that point, when you hear something like that, timing doesn't matter. You're just like, let's get it scheduled. Doesn't matter when, where, why, you're going. So they scheduled it for me, and it happened to be the day before school started that year. But I wanted to do what I... Hold on. Sorry about that. Gotta roll down my window. I'm getting hot. So I scheduled for that day. It's that morning, the day before school starts. And they take me back, and it's done by an ultrasound radiologist. And it's like getting your ear pierced many times, but a lot deeper. Same kind of like a gun thing. They numb the skin. They make a little incision in the skin, and they put this gun thing down, and they shoot and to take core biopsies inside. They use the same hole, so you only have one in one area. But it is pretty painful, pretty invasive. They tell you, rest for the next couple days, ice if needed, which is very needed, and not to do anything the following day, which, of course, that was going to be the first day of school. And my job at the school was very important on the first couple days of school, because I worked at the middle school with 7th and 8th graders. The 7th graders that were coming in didn't know the building, didn't know where their lockers were. And these are kids with special needs, don't know how to manage around the school. So I was determined to go to school. And I did. Packed my bra with some ice packs, took a whole bunch more ice packs with me, and kept them in the freezer in my classroom. The day went pretty well. The kids were really well behaved. I was very sore, but I made it through the day. All was well. The following day, I did go to school, very sore again. Regretted going to school the first day because I was so bruised and looked like I had been beaten on my right breast. Thank goodness no one can see that. I think I played it off very good. The older kids that knew me from the year before knew that I was going through something. They could tell a change in me. I was a little bit more depressed, a little bit less active. Not that I was really active before, because the year before I was still sick. But I was bubbly and talkative and loved to go goof around with my kids. I get a call that Thursday saying that my biopsy reports were back and they can get me in the following Monday, Tuesday for my results. So on my way home that day, I call my mom, who was a nurse at the time. She wasn't working for any of the doctors, I don't think, that I was with at the time, but the surgeon that did the biopsy, she actually used to work for them at one point in her career. So she called them up and she said, can we get her in earlier? Because once you call and say you have the results and then she's got to wait till next week, that's kind of torture. Can we get her in sooner? So they were able to get me in the next day, which was amazing, because I can't imagine waiting that whole week till the following week to get the results. So we go, my dad, my mom, my sister, I believe. It's kind of really foggy because when you get that kind of news, some stuff gets blanked out. But I think my mom and my dad and my sister went with. And the doctor says, yeah, you have breast cancer. At the time of my biopsy, the tumor was on my chest wall, and it was only about a centimeter, the size of a pea. Not that bad. They didn't really give me a stage yet. They had more testing to do, whatever. He wanted me to get in to get a port done as soon as possible. He went over some stuff. It's all really foggy. The only thing I remember really about that appointment was I started to laugh. And I looked at my mom and my dad and everybody in the room like, that's a C word. The C word's a bad word. And I just kind of smirked, like I was in shock. You don't know how you're going to react. Some people will cry automatically and freak out or whatever, but I almost thought it was comical, but yet relieving to have a reason for my issues. So then I start thinking, we leave the office, my dad has his arm around me, we're walking to the truck, and they take me home to their house because I didn't want to go home. My husband was sleeping. He worked midnights, so I didn't want to wake him up and tell him. I didn't want him to be alone when I told him. I didn't want to be alone with him myself when I told him, because he had lost his dad to cancer in 93, 92. I can't remember. It was before I met him. His dad passed away of cancer a month before we started dating. And I knew that was going to be hard on him. And then his mom passed away a few years before. She was just not healthy. She was a heavy smoker. So he had already been through a lot. So I call his sister. She lived in Illinois, and I'm like, I need you to come down. I said, they just told me I have cancer and I can't tell Jim by myself. He needs someone to be there for him, because I have people here for me. All his family was out of state, and that worried me. And I had all the support I needed with my family. So she came down. It's a 2-hour drive. She was there in 3 hours. And we met her over at the house and we told him. He was quiet, didn't say much. But that's how I found out I had cancer. The following week I went in to have my port put in my chest to start chemo. And then the rest of the stories are to come. I'm not going to go through it all because obviously I'm at 20 minutes and I just got that far. So I'll let this be my first video. This should be about August 26th. When I actually upload this, I gotta figure out YouTube, how to get it uploaded, and that kind of thing. I'm gonna try to figure out an introduction and stuff. So the videos will get better. Probably be a little bit more informative. But I have a lot of stories to tell. Stories of each part of going through the process, what it was like to go back to work, my kids, how they handled it, which out of respect for them, I'm going to keep their names out. Keeping my last name out of the videos for now. So if you watch this, don't put my name in the video or in the comments. Just because I'm starting to tread this water. I don't know. I've heard stories about YouTube and stuff, and that people can be weird. So, but I'm trying to do this not for me, but for other people that could use a little bit more dumbing down of what goes on. I'm doing this for my kids. I'm now a grandmother, and I want my granddaughter to be able to look back at these videos and see how strong their grandmother was. I'm hoping to be around to see them grow up and all that, but if I don't, hopefully their parents will let them watch these videos so they can get to know me. But hopefully in the future they'll have care for this and I'll be able to see my great grandkids someday. But yeah, I have a lot of stories, a lot of trials and tribulations throughout. Some of the more personal stuff I'm going to keep to myself. But I've been told I don't have a filter, so you may hear some interesting things. We'll see. Anyhow, a lot of good stories, a lot of bad stories. Probably will not give too much details on what medicines I've been on, what I've tried, that kind of thing, because the medicine changes so much from day to day. The treatments, the preventatives, the everything has changed since when I started to now, and I don't want the names of meds to be what my videos are about, because most people aren't going to know what they are anyway. If you do have a question about a certain med at a certain time or that kind of thing, I'll try to answer those in the comments. You can ask, but that would be very time consuming for me to go through and make a list of all the meds I've been on, the chemos, the treatments, the hormone therapies, all the new stuff that's come out. That would just take me years to go through and find them all, and side effects, and that I just would rather stay away from. But yeah, so this will be my first video. You can ask questions down below. Be patient with me with the videos because they are going to be amateurish. I'm going to try to do them in one sitting, so I don't have to do a whole lot of editing. But when I start talking about things I've done to help get through it, hobbies, volunteering, that kind of thing, we might go on field trips. Those of you that know me know I have reinvented myself more times than I can count. And that will be explained more later. And this YouTube thing is just another way I'm going to try to reinvent myself, because I feel everybody's got a purpose on this planet. If we don't have a purpose, there is no purpose. That's always been my thing that drove me to do anything after my diagnosis, or even before, was to be productive, be helpful, be one of those people that people want to see, because they know that you're not going to judge, you're not going to, you're always going to be helpful. And in places where other people can't or won't or whatever. So you'll hear those stories later. For now, let's get through August. I hear next week's going to be a scorcher when this is uploaded. Looking at 90s for the end of August. So let's stay cool and take care of ourselves. So I'm signing out, and have a wonderful day.